37 years. That means 1981 is when I met a little girl named Marie, who changed my life forever, and I began working in this field of saving, healing, easing human suffering in 1981 when I met that 3.5-year-old girl. Today I'm going to talk about another person who survived, but also thrived beyond terrible childhood sexual abuse. Her name is Carol. And I'm going to tell you about her life, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life, because we spent 30 years together as best friends, and 28 years of that as husband and wife. It was an amazing adventure, and I wish you could meet Carol. I wish we had her here today, but she won't be. She passed. But I want to tell you about the amazing accomplishments of this person in the transformational relationship we had for 3 decades. If you met Carol, say on a park bench in a public place, a total stranger, and you began to chat with her because she'd be open to that, you would discover that she was attentive. She asked interesting questions. She paid attention and thought about what you were saying. She was like that with everyone. Gave everybody the same respect. It did not matter if they were poor or rich. It did not matter if they were educated or uneducated. It didn't matter what race. It didn't matter what religion. She was always interested in people. And if you got to know her and have a relationship with her, she was always looking for ways to lift you up and to help you find your dreams and to help you accomplish what you need to with your family or with your children or with your parents. She was a healer. It was an amazing experience. And she was this way even with the abusers, people who abused children, these men who were despicable in what they had done, but she would speak to them with respect. She would do it with the same respect as she would give you. She would not humiliate them. She would not attack them. She would lift them up. And she would show them a path that they could take for redemption of their lives and healing their families or healing their own lives. And a few of those men took that path. Not as many as we would have liked. I need to tell you a little bit about her accomplishments and then a little bit of what she had to carry for weight in this life, some of the obstacles she had to overcome. When I met her, she was the clinical director of the largest private nonprofit sexual abuse center in the United States. And at that time, she was there in the late 70s. That was a time when people hardly said the word sexual abuse out loud. It was not open for public discussion. But she was there in the front lines, and she took over the clinical directorship of this agency, and she began to provide state-of-the-art therapy for everybody and anybody who could get themselves to the center and sign up. And she went out into the community and spoke and rallied all different kinds of troops in the form of private nonprofits and volunteers, and that was where I met her, is when I was a volunteer. We worked together for years, and after a while, the agency changed management, and we sort of transitioned there and formed a private practice of our own, specializing in this, and we discovered that we stayed busy all the time. We took on every case that we could. We took on every case regardless of whether or not people had any money, and we were passionate about what we were doing. We loved our work. I had her back, she had my back, and we were really good together. And sometimes when you find a partner like that, there's a phenomenon that happens. So you probably had the experience where 1 and 1 equals 3. And we discovered we were accomplishing things we didn't know we could. And we were traveling and giving speeches and trainings and It was a marvelously exciting time in life. And then her health started to give us some trouble, and it became more complicated. I will not tell you the specific acts committed against her body, her mind, her spirit. They're brutal and ugly. But I do need to tell you about the medical conditions that we dealt with as a couple and what she suffered from and walked through with such grace. She had injuries from the top of her head to the bottoms of her feet. In her childhood and adolescence, she suffered all kinds of damage to her body. She had concussions, numerous concussions. She had symptoms of traumatic brain injury before we had that term. She had lost most of the vision in her left eye. She had broken jaw, broken facial features. She had a compound fracture of her left arm. She had broken ribs, feet, ankles, toes. She had major spinal surgery on her neck, major surgery, very extensive surgery on her lower spinal area, the lumbar region. That didn't go well, and it gave her pain for the rest of her life. That was a nagging long-term problem, lower back pain. She also had pain in her pelvis, her sciatic in her left leg, and pain in both shoulders. But I never heard her complain about, I never heard anything come out of her mouth that sounded anything like self-pity. She didn't complain that life had cheated her. She did not complain or act in any resentful manner. I never heard her seem jealous or envious. She reminds me of a warrior, in the best sense of that word, and that she continued to work her recovery program on every level that she could, taking care of her problems, which is everything from PTSD to depression to obsessive-compulsive disorder and addiction. And through her life, at different times, she dealt with all of those and sought the best help that she could get, and she always thrived. She always lifted herself up. And everything that she learned in this process that worked for her, she passed along to everyone else. It was precious to be around someone like that and learn with her, work with her. As things got worse, for her health, she became increasingly disabled over time and was not able to participate in our business as much. She had more medical problems to take care of every day. Sometimes we were priced out of the medical profession because these were pre-existing conditions. And sometimes, well, there were just times when it was so expensive that we were driven into bankruptcy and broke and on the verge of homelessness, and then we were able to collect Medicaid, and she could see a doctor through that program. At one of those times when she was really suffering, I was doing a lot of the cooking, which was an adventure in itself, and I'm surprised she thrived through that, but she apparently did. And I was getting her breakfast ready. I had already given her her pain medications for that day with some yogurt, so she'd have something in her stomach when those medications began to dissolve. And she cuddled up in the bed. It was a cold morning, I can remember, and this was kind of a typical morning. I went back in the kitchen to get the breakfast ready to go, and as I walked past the bedroom door, I noticed that she was shivering. And I watched her a little bit, and I knew that part of it was that it was a cold morning and she needed to cuddle up in the covers. And part of it was that she was in pain. The medications hadn't kicked in yet. And part of it was that she was afraid. That the journey was at times scary. And she wasn't sure how it was all going to turn out. Part of what this situation involved was, I will point out that we talked early in the relationship because she was over 10 years older than me, and she had all these health problems, and she brought them up early in our relationship, and she said, you know, what are you going to do, Jeffrey, when my body starts to break down, when my skin's sagging and everything else is sagging, and I'm not healthy and all of that? What are you going to do? And I didn't have to think very long because I thought of it already. I said, well, the way I see it, Carol, is that if we still enjoy each other's company, if we still find interesting things to talk about, and we can still laugh together, it doesn't matter about the body. It's just you and me, and that's what keeps us going. She thought that sounded all right. And after a pause, I can remember this decades ago, telling her, I said, and if I have anything to say about it, if I have the power, what I am going to do is that if your time comes around and it's time for you to be leaving this world, I said, if I have any way I can do it, I'm going to be holding you in my arms. I'm going to reassure you, you're going to know that you're safe and that you've lived a good life. Because safety and love were not there when she came into this world. But I wanted her to have it on the way out. So on this particular morning, she was shaking. And I put everything aside. I went into the bedroom and I got under the covers with her and put my arm around her. And she snuggled in there, and we were both feeling warm and reassured and close to each other. It was that kind of intimacy that we learned to enjoy over the last years of her life. And it was a time to be close and to be real with each other. And she brought up something that worked well for her. She said, Jeffrey, tell me a story. Well, that made me smile because I love to do it. And we practiced this little ritual because it would help her bridge the gap between the pain and when the pain medications kick in. And it was good practice for me too, to remember some of the adventures we'd had in life. So I took her on that morning with my arm around her. I took her back in time to a journey we made before we were married, before we were even thinking about getting married seriously. We took a trip from Arizona to New England to do some trainings and presentations that were modest in size, but it was in a part of the country where she grew up and she wanted to show it to me. So we flew to New York City and we rented a car and we drove up the coast and we visited all the beautiful places that she had told me about, and it was October, the leaves were changing color, and there's these brilliant fiery red leaves and yellow, and hillsides and Mount Washington covered with all this beauty, and every one gorgeous, idyllic little New England village after another. And we felt like teenagers or college kids on an outing that we just laughed, and we went on little hikes, and we bought little souvenirs, and we went to New York City, and we stayed at the San Moritz, to Central Park South, and we took a carriage ride around the park, and we had an absolutely wonderful time. And as I paused in telling her the story, and obviously she was very comfortable, she raised her head and she looked at me and she gave me this smirk. She says, "You skipped something." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She says, "You're not telling the whole story." I said, I'm sorry, What did I forget? She says, sunglasses. Oh, okay. I know what yeah, you're right, I forgot something. So I go back to the story. We're standing on the rocks at the edge of the Atlantic Ocean in Acadia National Park in Maine. And it's just gorgeous. And the power of the ocean, I've never experienced it like that before. We were laughing and talking. But she just shook her head and she says, you know, marriage will never work for us. So, why? Well, I can just see that now. It's not going to work out for us. I mean, this is good. This is a good time, but it won't work for us. I said, well, why not? She said, well, you're too immature. Did you immature? Too immature. Well, and she's in the bed. She says, and what did you do, Jeffrey? And I said, well, I'll tell you what I did. I took my Tom Cruise sunglasses and I threw them on the rocks and broke them into pieces. Then I clenched my fist and I pumped my feet and I squished up my face and I said, I am not immature, I am not immature, I am not immature. And she laughed like you're laughing. And I laughed too. And on that morning there in bed, we both laughed again because it's always been funny. And that was part of our life together. That's part of what sustained us through the hard work and through her suffering. We rescued each other. And it was something gorgeous. It was something beautiful. I learned about love and commitment and courage and suffering and beauty in the face of ugly. And we had a wonderful time together. And the people at hospice, 2 women there said, yeah, they were recovering survivors. And all those staff hurried around her in the hospice environment and took care of her like angels. And on November 20th, 2013 at 9:05 in the morning, when I had my arm around her, comforting her, and she knew that she was safe and loved and had lived a good life, she passed from this world peacefully. And I made a sound I'd never heard myself make before or since. It was grief and it was joy. It was grief over losing my friend, the most important, transformational, and gracious person in the world I'd ever met. And it was joy for the fact that we'd had so much time together. And in the name of Carol, of her memory today, I ask that we all renew our commitment to supporting these children who've been sexually abused and getting the best services that they can find so that they too can feel safe, loved, and live a good life.